The quality is so much better than I expected. It feels like something way more expensive. Honestly, it's kind of a steal. Show support to Nubian Narrator and cop some merch before it's sold out again.
Two boys went out for pizza. They didn't come back. That's the beginning of the story. That's also the part everyone keeps trying to emotionally outrun. Because it's easier to talk about the photo. Easier to talk about the Instagram account. Easier to talk about the songs. Easier to talk about the controversy. But the truth is simpler and uglier. Max Dixon was 16. Mason Rist was 15. They were hunted down and killed because someone thought they were someone else. Mistaken identity, the deadliest typo. Everything that follows is aftermath. And yet somehow the aftermath is still managing to get worse. The prison selfie era. Let's talk about what happened after the convictions. Because apparently, in 2026, murder doesn't end with sentencing. It continues on social media. One of the convicted teenagers managed to have an Instagram account while in custody, not to apologize, not to reflect, not to express remorse. No, to post music, to post content, to reference the killings, to turn one of the most devastating crimes in Bristol in recent years into branding. Let that sit. 2 families destroyed, 2 boys buried, 2 empty bedrooms, 2 chairs at the table that will never be filled again. And meanwhile, inside custody, someone thought, you know what this needs? A rollout. This is not rehabilitation. This is not reflection. This is not grief. This is grotesque performance culture bleeding into a place designed for consequence. We've entered the era of carceral content creation. There was a time when prison meant removal from the world. Silence. Consequence. Reflection. Now, apparently it means Wi-Fi, filters, and audience engagement. You can commit one of the most horrifying acts imaginable, be convicted for it, and still attempt to cultivate a persona online. Not remorseful, not broken, not humbled, but posturing, performing, curating. It's like influencer culture metastasized into criminality. And the most uncomfortable question is this: at what point did clout become more important than conscience? 33 seconds, when time becomes a brand. The most chilling part is not that content existed. The most chilling part is that some of it reportedly referenced the time frame of the attack. 33 seconds. Imagine having your child's life reduced to a timestamp. Imagine hearing that number used not as a memorial, but as material. That's not ignorance. That's not teenage stupidity. That's not misunderstanding. That is a profound absence of empathy. And if society has any instinct for self-preservation, it should recoil from that. Social media has warped consequence. We've spent years teaching young people that visibility equals value, that attention equals worth, that shock equals engagement, that controversy equals relevance. We told them, build a platform, grow your audience, create content, stay visible. We forgot to teach some things should never become material for social media, because once everything becomes performative, even violence risks becoming aesthetic. Even grief becomes background. Even death becomes material. And when someone inside custody thinks posting music about an unaliving is acceptable behavior, we are not just looking at an individual problem. We are looking at a cultural one. This isn't just youth behavior, this is moral dislocation. People will rush to explain this away. They'll say, they're young. They don't understand the gravity. They're immature. They're influenced by their environment. No. Plenty of young people understand empathy. Plenty of young people understand consequence. Plenty of young people commit crimes and still feel remorse. This isn't immaturity, this is moral dislocation. This is what happens when someone becomes so absorbed in identity performance that they no longer recognize the humanity of others. 2 boys are dead, and the unaliver thought the appropriate response was to build a narrative around it. That's not teenage confusion. That's something darker. The families are still alive and still suffering. Let's talk about the people who have no microphone in this circus. Max's parents, Mason's parents, their siblings, their friends, their classmates, their communities. They have to wake up every day in a world where their sons are gone. They have to carry birthdays that never come, graduations that never happen, futures that never unfold. And then they're forced to hear that the people responsible are posting content online, that their children's deaths have become aesthetic references, that someone, somewhere, thought this was a flex. This isn't just offensive, it's psychologically violent. It reopens wounds that never closed. The justice system did its job, but the culture undid it. Let's be clear, the courts handed down serious sentences. This was treated as the grave crime it was. Legally, justice was pursued. But justice in court does not exist in a vacuum. It exists within a culture. And when that culture allows convicted individuals to maintain digital personas, share content, and reference their crimes, something has gone deeply wrong in the ecosystem surrounding justice. Prison is meant to be a boundary, not a stage. Custody is meant to restrict, not to provide distribution. The fact that these accounts existed at all is a systemic failure, not just an individual one. We are failing to understand what rehabilitation actually means. There will be people who say, everyone deserves a chance to express themselves. Rehabilitation matters. Creative outlets are important. All of that can be true and still not apply here. Rehabilitation is about growth, accountability, understanding harm, demonstrating change. Rehabilitation is not about celebrating notoriety, referencing the harm, posturing for an audience, using the crime as narrative capital. That's not rehabilitation. That's distortion. If anything, it demonstrates the opposite of reform. We've built a culture that rewards transgression with attention. Here's the uncomfortable part. We created this environment. Every time social media algorithms reward shock, we reinforce the lesson. Every time controversy drives views, we validate the strategy. Every time extreme behavior generates attention, we teach the template. So when someone attempts to weaponize their crime into identity content, it's not happening in isolation. It's happening inside a system that taught them attention equals power. That doesn't excuse behavior, but it does indict the broader ecosystem we've built. This is where dark humor ends and moral seriousness begins. There are stories where satire is easy, politics, bureaucracy, media nonsense. This isn't that. This is one of those moments where humor must be surgical, not to trivialize but to expose the grotesque absurdity of what's happened. Because there is something deeply absurd in the worst way about a convicted unaliver acting like a misunderstood artist from inside custody. There is something sickeningly surreal about violence intersecting with influencer culture. There is something culturally broken when death becomes strategy. That absurdity deserves to be named. Not mocked lightly, but confronted fiercely. We need to stop confusing attention with significance. The people who committed this crime are not important because they posted content. They are not significant because they generated outrage. They are not artists because they uploaded music. The important people here are the 2 boys who died. Their lives, their potential, their absence. Everything else is noise. And the more attention we give to performative behavior from offenders, the more we risk shifting focus away from the victims, which is precisely what shouldn't happen. This is why prison should mean disconnection, not for cruelty, but for protection. Protection of victims, protection of families, protection of public trust. Protection of the idea that some acts remove you from public platforms. If someone is serving time for murder, they should not be curating a public-facing digital identity. Not because we deny their humanity, but because we acknowledge the harm done. there must be boundaries. Otherwise, consequence becomes aesthetic. A culture that can't draw lines will collapse into chaos. Every society survives by deciding where the lines are. What is acceptable, what is not. What is forgivable, what is not. What remains private, what must remain unseen. If we reach a point where murderers can publicly perform their identity online from custody and society debates whether that's acceptable, we are not in a healthy moral ecosystem. We are in drift, and drift leads to collapse. The real question isn't why did they post? The real question is, why did the system allow it? Why was there access? Why wasn't it intercepted earlier? Why did platforms host it? Why did removal require public outrage rather than automatic policy enforcement? Those are systemic questions, not emotional ones. And those are the questions that actually protect future victims. This is about dignity, not revenge. This is not about calling for brutality. This is not about dehumanizing anyone. This is not about bloodlust. This is about dignity. The dignity of the victims, the dignity of the families, the dignity of justice, the dignity of society itself. When behavior like this occurs, our response should not be hysteria, but clarity. Some lines should not be crossed. Some platforms should not be available. Some actions should disqualify you from public performance, not out of hatred, out of respect. Max Dixon and Mason Rist were not social media content. They were not characters in a narrative. They were not material for someone else's identity. They were boys. They were sons. They were friends. They were lives. The fact that anyone involved in their deaths thought it appropriate to post music, images, or content referencing what happened is not just offensive. It is a symptom of a culture that has lost its grounding in consequence and empathy. We should be asking harder questions of custodial systems, platform policies, social media culture, institutional boundaries, not because we want cruelty, but because we want meaningful accountability. If justice means anything, it must include the protection of victims' dignity. It must include boundaries around visibility. It must include the understanding that some acts permanently alter your relationship with public platforms. Otherwise, we are not rehabilitating, we are entertaining. And that is the darkest outcome of all. Not right, not left, just real.